I want to hear about microphones.
Great, one of my favorite topics.
Okay, so this man over here said that you were instrumental in the design of the C-800.
Well, not so much of the design. I quasi saved the C-800G from going out of production.
Saved it? Okay, so tell me the story. What happened?
We designed the C-800G back in 1990. Sony engineers decided they wanted to build a tube mic. They bought all the other tube mics on the market. They tested them and found that they spec differently every single day, depending on the temperature of the studio, depending on the temperature of the tube. And that has a lot to do with the sonic quality and the noise floor and the things of the mic. They found out our microphone sounded absolutely the best and spec the best if you kept the tube at exactly 13 degrees Celsius, which is low 50s Fahrenheit.
Oh, it's right here.
Yes. So how do you keep a hot glowing tube at a certain temperature? You can't dunk it in a bucket of water and you can't blow an air conditioner on it. But in 1990, they found a semiconductor device called a Peltier device, P-E-L-T-I-E-R. It's a semiconductor where one side gets hot, like you figure it should, but the other side literally gets cold.
Okay.
And they take the cold side and they lay it next to the tube with some thermal grease in between to regulate the temperature to always stay at 13 degrees Celsius. Because if there's one thing a Sony engineer hates, is not having one of our products perform perfectly every time you use it. Now, we can regulate the temperature of the tube to stay at that perfect temperature, but you still have to get rid of the heat. And so that's the reason for the heat sinks on the back of the microphone. But the heat is over here, and actually if you put a finger up on top, it's warm, and if you put a finger below, it's cold.
Okay.
That's the Peltier device. But you've got to get the excess heat from here out to the heat sinks. It's not going to go there by itself, and it's not going to go via conduction. So, believe it or not, there is a liquid transfer medium that does it. There's a hollow pipe that's closed that goes from the tube area out to the heatsink. And that hollow pipe is filled with a specially chosen fluid whose boiling point is right at the temperature of the hot glowing tube. Because what happens when you boil a liquid? It turns into a gas.
Absolutely.
Water and steam. So here, it creates hot gas bubbles in this fluid, and those hot gas bubbles float out to the end of the heatsink when the mic is either that or slightly elevated like here. You don't want with the heatsink aiming down, flat or elevated. And so the hot bubbles float out to the end of the heatsink, release their heat to the fins, condense back into a liquid form, and dribble back down and continue round and around all day long.
That's awesome.
And so it's a liquid-cooled, large condenser, tube microphone. It's a electro, whatever. You get the idea.
No, absolutely. And
now, so that's why it's $10,700.
And worth every penny.
And worth every penny. But what does it sound like is the question. People love the C-800G because it has a vocal forward voicing, meaning you record a vocal with it and you bring up all the other elements in your mix and the vocal still sits out in front. You don't have to wrestle with it and put it through plugins and herd it to do it. It does it for you. And that's a really valuable thing. There are artists that will not record in the studio unless they have a C-800G. But they're so popular that we're over 2 years backordered on them.
Yes.
And it's $10,700. They're hand-built in Japan by these little gentlemen that have been hand-building them for the last 30 years. And we started running out of tubes. But we found additional tubes made at the original factory in Eastern Europe. The factory is no longer there, but we came up with an entire huge pile of the original tubes. They are properly aged and gone through and culled through, so now we're only using tubes that surpass the original spec that we originally used for the microphone. And we're back in production. It had been out of production for 2-3 years, and now we're back in production with the C-800G. And if you're a commercial studio, I would say that you almost have to own a C-800G because people won't come to your studio unless you can. But a lot of people can't afford $10,700. So we have the new little brother from the C-800G called the C-80. And the C-80 is voiced to sound as close to a C-800G as possible.
Yes, and I have a C-800G, and I was just listening to the C-80, and it's pretty close,
It's
man.
very, very close, and it's $499.
So that's incredible. And I have some questions because I've been very interested in this microphone. Has a little bit of an older brother too, the C-100.
The C-100, which is right over here.
Yes, and so that's a dual diaphragm.
It is, and though that microphone goes out to 50K, along with the pencil mics that also go out to 50K, from 20 hertz to 50K.
Okay.
And originally we built that as really great for high-res recording. You're doing 96, you're doing 192, you're doing DSD, whatever it is, you should be capturing frequencies way out. But if you think about a traditional professional microphone that is spec'd from 20 to 20K, it really starts rolling off around 14 and starts going down.
Yes.
This goes flat out way, way up higher. But I have people, when I say 50K, I'm not a bat, I'm not a dog, I can't hear that, what do I need that for? And the answer is that in nature, when we hear a multi-frequency sound source reach our ears, all of those frequencies reach our ears time coincident. And we go, that sounds like reality. That's what I expect to hear. But in a microphone, microphones have what's called phase response, which is a pleasant name for what is really happening, which is starting at about 3K and up, the higher the frequency, the more time delayed it gets. So you get this time frequency smearing effect, which is not the way we hear in nature. And it creates the coloration of that particular microphone. But in our microphones, you could say that phase response is moved way up high in the frequency range outside of where we hear, but in the range where we can hear, it's all time coincident, and it sounds insanely natural and insanely real. So that's one of the reasons for the high-res C100 microphone.
That's amazing. So, if we're a recording studio, which we are, we are interested in picking up a couple of these. Are you, is this primarily voiced to be a vocal microphone?
Oh, not at all.
Because I love using my C800 on some other places.
Right.
It's one of the best guitar microphones I've ever used, just a very, very expensive one to use it on.
It's very expensive. The C80, the C100, great instrument mics, great cabinet mics, guitar cabinet mics. I could even see using a C80 at its price point for podcasting, where the common one that gets used these days is a dynamic microphone. Yep. It doesn't have quite the life, the sense of whatever that a condenser can have, especially a condenser with a forward vocal voicing. And if I was listening to a podcast, I'd want to hear every drop of emotion coming out of the presenter, which this microphone can deliver. Even podcasting, even though you say a mic's good for podcasting, it kind of cheapens it, but by no means should this mic be cheaper.
Well, these are Sony microphones. This is the best you can make, right?
That's right. Well, the build quality is Sony standard. It's very high quality build quality. They are meant to last a lifetime. It becomes a permanent part of your collection instead of if you're starting out your mic collection and you just sort of buy a knockoff microphone. Okay. But here, for another a couple $100 more, you can have a mic that's going to become a permanent part of your collection.
So one thing I want to say just for everybody who watches this video is I saw something recently about the Sony Microphone Factory and about how...
Did you watch it?
Yes, about how it was one of the most...
In Japan, the Tayo Factory.
Yes.
I made that video.
You made that video. It's a wonderful video.
It's a good video.
And what you guys have done to set up the factory for your workers to be able to go and work there, I just thought was
Isn't that a nice story?
So inspiring.
They're handicapped. A lot of them are handicapped.
That's truly amazing. And, I'll make sure that there's a link to that video, which you made.
That's nice. Well, I made the story of the Tayo Factory where they talked about building the C100s and those mics.
Yes.
There's maybe something recently about the Tayo Factory and the handicap situation.
Yeah, I think I watched both of them. I will put them both
good.
up. Yes.
Well, good.
And can I ask you 3 questions before I let you go?
No,
so,
fine.
There's a couple, rumors from growing up with this microphone in studios that I've always heard, and I would love to set the record straight.
Let's hear what it is.
Okay.
If I have answers.
So the first one, is there a direct lineage from the C500 to this microphone?
I don't have an answer.
Okay.
I know that we went from C-37, which was Frank Sinatra's favorite mic.
Yep.
And, C-38s and C-48s. And then, the C-800 was the first new studio microphone and obviously a tube microphone in the early 1990s. We didn't come out with another studio microphone until 2018 with the C-100s and the two pencil mics.
So, there were two C-800s at one point.
There was a C-800 and a C-800G.
And this is the G, right?
The G.
So
the 800 did not have the cooling mechanism, and it was, I think, a different capsule.
Yeah, well, that had the tunable capsule that you guys were famous for in your older microphones.
So anyway.
So, is that microphone going to be coming back into production too?
No, the C-800, no.
Yep, okay.
No.
So the next...
Not as far as I know.
So as far as the next two rumors I have is, one, I heard, way back in the day that this microphone was originally designed for Mariah Carey, who was a Sony artist at the time.
Don't think it was designed for her, but she certainly bought them, got them. She was going out with, the president of Sony Records. I'm not sure that whatever. Barbara Streisand used them. All the famous hip-hop artists, a lot of people use that microphone.
And then the last one is a lot of people believe that the 1073 and the C-800 are a match made in heaven, but I want to hear it from the man himself.
I don't live I'm not a recording engineer and living in that world.
Yes.
So you just hear me spouting something that I don't really have direct experience with.
Can I ask what preamplifier you guys use over at Sony with these?
I'm not from Sony Music Studios, so I can't even tell you that. I'm the product manager and the equipment side of our business, responsible for all of this pro audio gear.
Okay, and today we're using an Allen
I'm using this brand new little Allen and Heath digital mixer, 96K converters.
It sounds great.
I love that little thing. I used to use their larger one, and I had to borrow at every trade show, and then they came out with this one, and I go, I can buy that. So it was very, very cool.
Well, thank you so much for your time.
My pleasure.